Going into next week, what do we expect? That's my initial sell point from last week. Price is beginning to print simple bearish market structure, right? Lower high, new lower low, lower high. See how price retested that zone, new lower low. See how price has gone back for a pullback, and price may continue bearish until we come into 3,238.590. All right. Welcome back, guys. You can see how price made its way into our target of 3,238.590, just like I predicted last week. So going into next week, what do you expect? First of all, let me see how we closed for last week. So last week we closed with a bearish engulfing candle. So I'm thinking that price may still want to make its way into this 3,096.914 area. Let's look at the daily time frame. On the daily time frame, it looks like price has created a new lower low and has gone back for a pullback, and you can see how we closed Friday with a bearish candle. So I'm thinking price may still make its way down to this 3.096.914 area. Let's look at the 4-hour time frame. Now, on the 4-hour time frame, I'm going to refine this area. I'm going to bring it all the way up here, and then I'm going to put this line here. So if we are going to go for an initial bearish move, I think price will try to retest this 3,238.590 area and 3,221.343 area, stop loss above, then TP below. Now that depends on how you execute, please. At let's-trade10x.com, we have our own execution strategy. All right, so we wait for confirmation. We just don't enter blindly because we plotted a zone there. Though you need to watch and observe how price reacts around that zone. So if you don't have one, our next online one-on-one mentorship is kicking off next week Monday, not this tomorrow's Monday. I'm talking about next week's Monday. That's on the 20th, the 26th. Just go to the website, the details are there. All right, so we are not going to be entering blindly because we have a zone there. If we see a confirmation to sell, then we'll be selling into 3,096.914. all right, then price may also want to go higher next week, because if you go to the weekly time frame, you can see that the candlesticks are printing themselves side by side. So it's more like in a range, you understand. But if price decides to push higher from here without giving a bearish confirmation here, then I'll recommend you wait for price to create a new higher high that's breaking above this area of 3,238.590, then create a higher high. Then you want to catch it on the pullback, stop loss below 3,221.343. then TP will be here, being 3,347.298. all right, so those are my bullish and bearish scenario on gold. The next on my list is Nas100. Wait for price to break out of this 20,373.66 area. Wait for price to break above that area. Then you want to catch it on the pullback, and then it's going to be a short buy to the upside into this obvious swing point above. So when price breaks out of it on the 4-hour time frame, I'll recommend you catch it on the pullback on a much lower time frame, like the 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or 1-hour time frame. Stop loss should be anywhere below 20,206.87. Welcome back, guys. So I told you that you should wait for price to break above 20,373.66 before you buy into 20,960.90 last week. And if you took advantage of it on the 15 minutes time frame like I recommended, you will notice how price around here broke out of that zone, gave it a pullback. Actually not a deeper pullback as I would like, but still gave a pullback into that region before making its way to our target. All right, and money was made. Now going into next week, what do we expect? All right, so I'm going to be plotting a new zone here. So going into next week, I would like to see price pull back into this 20,960.90 and 20,882.51 area before price takes off into our next target of 21,942.56. All right, so that's what I would like to see play out on Nas100 tomorrow, or should I say next week. All right, so the next on my list is Usdjpy. Going into next week, what do we expect? Right, remember we are still yet to hit our target, so two things may happen. We may come for a pullback, all right, before we now buy into the target, or price may break above. Let's say price just continues higher. If you want to buy, I'll advise, if you're not already in this trade, I'll advise you should be patient. You can buy above 145.978. So for price to continue higher, break above it on the 4-hour time frame, then you can catch it on the pullback on the lower time frame. Stop loss below TP remains 147.563. Welcome back, guys. You can see that price opened as a gap up. All right, now this may confuse many of you because price opened as a gap up, but it's gapped up above our area of 145.978 where we intended to buy from. Now I advise you to take advantage of this on the 15 minutes. Now let's see. You can see when price gapped up at the open of last week, price pulled back. Here's my arrow. Price pulled back. We didn't get a confirmation. Price went back below that zone, came back up, right, creating equal highs, came back down, equal lows, lower high, equal low, new higher high. That's the change in market structure because it broke above this zone, came back for the pullback, retesting that zone. Simple market structure. If you've not seen if you've not watched my market structure video, please watch this video up here. All right, before price now catapulted into our target from last week. All right, so going into next week, what do we expect on Usdjpy? Meanwhile, let me delete some of these areas here. Good. So now on Usdjpy next week, I am bearish because if you even go to the weekly time frame, if you've been following my videos from 3 to 4 weeks ago, you'll remember that I use simple market structure to determine this area as my target when price was trading lower, because on the weekly time frame I wanted to see price come back, retest this zone before we continue lower, and that has happened on the weekly time frame. And you can see we close with what looks like, some people will argue this is not a dodgy candle, but due to my experience, I would just classify this as a dodgy candle. You know, whatever you choose to call it, you're right. In the candlestick Bible, that's not a dodgy, but I classify it as a dodgy. All right, so I'm expecting to see price continue lower going into next week. Now if I go to the daily time frame, however, we had a dodgy on Friday and at an area that looks like a perfect market structural area. All right, so price may want to pull back a little before we now sell off for the week. So that's why I'm going to be giving you two sell areas. Now I'll go to the 4-hour time frame. Number one, price looks like it has given us, on this 4-hour time frame, has given us a good wave of bearish price action. Lower high, new lower low, new lower high, then we can go on to create a new lower low. However, I said I was going to give you two areas that price may sell from, right, in case it doesn't sell off directly from where it is right now. This would be my second sell area. All right, so initially if price opens on Monday, it looks like a go, it looks like a good selling area. All right, it looks like price should just fall off from this area all the way to the downside. All right, but if that fails, let's say we get into that trade and price hits our stop loss above this area here, maybe around 146.333, then the second area I'll be looking for sales is for price to pull back into this area, stop loss around 147.139, then we'll sell into the downside. You necessarily may not have to sell into 140.75, so you can take profit anywhere you feel comfortable. I think our first take profit area should even be around here, being 142.723. 3. All right, so that's my view on Usdjpy. The next on my list is Gbpjpy. So if you are not in this trade, it's going to be a very short move to the upside, because I'll recommend, if you have not been in the trade from the lower section here, I'm just going to pull one line here. So what happens is, should price on this forward time frame continues higher and closes above 193.728, you now want to switch over to the 15 minutes time frame, if you know how to do that properly, to catch the pullbacks with a tighter stop loss below this zone, and hoping the price trades into our TP region. All right, so welcome back, guys. So just like Usdjpy, price also gapped up on Gbpjpy last week. All right, so if we switch over to the 15 minutes time frame, like I recommended you should do, you will see the moments when we experience that gap up. You will see the moments where when we experience that gap up around here. So price did pull back into our zone. This was perfect, and then price made its way to our target of 194.714. So price played out perfectly. And so going into next week, what should I expect? We've already hit our target with this, so I'm just going to delete this. I'm also going to delete all these zones here because they fulfill their purpose. All right, meanwhile, let's look at the weekly time frame first of all. So we can also see that Gbpjpy closed bearish for last week, as you can see with the color of last week's candle. If we go to the daily time frame, you can see that price is falling off from our target from last week. All right, then on the 4-hour time frame, just like I did on Usdjpy, I'm going to be giving to sell areas. It looks like a go from here, but the pullback here is kind of shallow, so I won't be surprised if price decides to go for a deeper pullback next week. All right, so if should price fail to continue lower here, meanwhile, let's identify our first target. Our first target will be 191.092. all right, first bearish target will be that. So if price says, hey, I want to go for a deeper pullback, then I would like to see price pull back into these areas of 194.815. You understand, before we now sell off into 191.092. So it's up to you what your execution strategy looks like. Once again, at Let's310x.com, we have our execution strategy. So you can either buy the course or the online mentorship program. That's if you want to have real-time feedbacks and live trades and all of that. So that's why people choose this. That's why most people choose the online mentorship program, all right, which is kicking off next week. All right, so if you want to learn how we execute, you also want to pay for any of our mentorship program. All right, so that's, by the way, let's go on with the analysis, and that's that for Gbpjpy. The next on my list is DXY. As you can see, first of all, let me even plot a mini 4-hour zone within this area. And you can see that market structure wise, price just created a new higher high, which is obviously higher than these areas here, and looks like price has gone for that pullback and may continue pointing to the upside. My bullish target on DXY is 101.261. Welcome back, guys. So DXY last week was trading around here, if you remember vividly, and I plotted this zone just like you saw from the replay. And my target for last week on DXY was 101.261. Going into next week, you will notice that if you've been watching my videos, okay, I've not done analysis on DXY for quite some time until last week, but this area was my target all along from the moment we got this candlestick here. All right, so price has gone for that pullback into the zone that I've had here for quite some time now, and gave us a dodgy candlestick around that area. So price may most likely fall off next week. Now, if I go to the daily time frame, you can see that price respected that zone properly and came back down. Looks like it's going back up. However, on the 4-hour time frame, I'll be expecting for price to continue lower. All right, even though I said I'm expecting for price to continue lower, price could still open and still retest these areas of 101.653 and 101.261. Why? Because of the way we closed on Friday. If you go to the daily time frame and look at Friday's daily candlestick, you will see the size. All right, so price may want to attempt or want to compensate for that bullish price action on Friday before selling off at some points during next week. But for the most part of next week, I am anticipating a sell, at least from within this region, or maybe this previous highs it created for us. So if price fails to continue selling from here, then anywhere within this area would be another area I'll be looking for sells. All right, so as price progresses, I'll be able to spot that area better. But as it is right now, I just know that it's going to happen anywhere within this zone, at least for now. That's my view. So as price progresses, I'll better understand what to do next. So if you want to learn how to do this on your own, so even as price progresses, you want to grab our mentorship program. All right, so that is that on DXY. Then the next on my list is GBP USD. So going into next week, guys, I'm just expecting a simple pullback. That is, should price on DXY continue trading to the upside or is bullish next week, I would like to see a mini pullback on, let me even delete these lines and do it from the scratch. All right, so I want to see price pull back into the 1.33485 and 1.33 or 33361. All right, and hopefully a third touch to this trend line that I plotted on the 4-hour time frame before we sell. My target, my bearish target. So welcome back, guys. So sorry, this was my thumbnail for last week, so let me just delete this number 3 so that we can get a clear picture. So even though price opened super bearish last week, let's say you were religious about doing exactly what I said. Now, when price pulled back into the areas of 1.33485 and 1.33361, you can still see that we had that rejection. All right, even if I move this zone to as far as price traveled after tapping into that zone, you can see we got a return of 4.32. So whatever you were risking, you would have gotten times 4.32 of that. All right, so going into next week, now that I'm anticipating a bearish DXY, now this makes all of this analysis now quite complicated. So I would say I really don't know much that is going to happen on the GBP USD going into next week. But if DXY sells off based on my analysis, then I would recommend you wait for price to break above 1.33485 next week. You want to catch it on the pullback. Then your target wants to be this next area here. Let me put a line there, being 1.34431. All right, that's if the XY continues lower. All right, next week, I think since I'm anticipating a bearish DXY, then this is what I'd like to see going into next week. All right, so but if price continues lower, first of all, that's if price continues higher on DXY first of all next week, then this would now be another area, another good area to buy from, being 1.31735. all right, something like this. Then back in this case, if you buy from this lower section here, then your target should be 1.33361. all right, so that is what I'll be looking for on GBP USD going into next week. And then the last on my list for this week is Euro USD. Now for Euro USD, for some weeks now, or should I say for the past 2 weeks now, you will notice that I've been sitting on the sidelines on Euro USD, right? Just as DXY is bouncing off a resistance area, Euro USD is also bouncing off an area of support. And why do I think Euro USD may take off from here and DXY fall off from where it is? If I go to the monthly time frame, you can see that last month's price created a new higher high, even though it came into a resistance area around here. It looks like price, for those on the mentorship program, you know how I love to plot my zones at the bodies. So you can see how price tapped into the body of this candle and we've started seeing that rejection. So price is beginning to want to compensate for last month's bullish price action. Let's go to the weekly time frame. So on the weekly time frame, you can see we closed with what looks like a dodge candle, so price may most likely take off from there. If we go to the daily time frame, we also notice that there is a bearish engulfing candle for Friday, just like we had a bullish engulfing on DXY on Friday. So price may want to, let me delete this line, price may want to attempt a second dive into this 1.10929 and 1.10812 area before we take off, just like I did on Gbpusd also when I gave you another buy area down below. So that's what may happen on EURUSD going into next week also. Let's even look at the 4-hour time frame. So two things, right? We either buy from here being 1.10929 and 1.10812. We either buy from there back to this upside, or wait for a change in market structure. That's if price decides not to come for this deeper drop into this zone before taking off. Then let's wait for price to go on, give us a change in market structure. That's give us a new higher high. Then you want to catch it on the pullback, stop loss below, and you want to catch this on a much lower time frame so that you can have a tighter stop loss and a decent traveling distance to the upside. But my bullish target is 1.13430. All right, so that's how far we can go for this week. Thanks for staying to the end of this video. Meanwhile, our next webinar is still holding on Friday. Make sure you join our general Telegram channel. The link is in the description of this video, and it's going to be in the pinned comments of this video down below. So click to join our Telegram channel so that you don't miss out on our webinar. And if you missed out on the previous webinar, especially last week's webinar, it's a powerful webinar. The video is also going to be in the pinned comments down below. Until then, I wish you a successful trading week, and I'm going to see you on Wednesday.